I'm just waiting for a couple of minutes until the stream has officially started before actually playing, which is at 7 o'clock for me. Then obviously try and give a couple of minutes for other people to join as well if they want to. It also seemed appropriate to make the theme of my streams from now on going forward to use the DA Garden theme. It's who I am, and it fits rather well for a setting of waiting. If the audio levels are a bit off, please let me know. I can adjust them quite quickly before we start. I think I should be loud enough and the audio shouldn't be deafening. We will have to wait and see. Okay, let me just restart the ROM. Before I start, I'm just going to say hello and welcome everybody if you are here in the stream. I just decided today on a random whim to play through Sonic to Return to Westside Island. Obviously as a result of the hacking contest last week, which I thought was rather successful. The ROM hack itself did win the community trophy for best level design, which I am quite happy with. Yeah, but really nice to sort of receive that, and also a lot of the praise I received in the results show, both during and afterwards, was very gratefully received. And it just means that I feel like I'm sort of on the right track when it comes to developing level layouts and the design of Sonic level structure. And yeah, sort of going forward, sort of take that with me, and it's nice to see that the community are in agreement with that. It's hard to say, put it into words, but yeah, I'm just very grateful to people to have voted on that and for me to have received, to have won that. So again, thank you. So today we're going to start up with the game now, and I'm just going to do some commentary as we go. Again, if any of the audio volumes are off, like you can't hear me or the game's too loud, please let me know. I can adjust as we go. So thank you. Here we go. So Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Return to Westside Island. The aforementioned sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog Westside Island, which I released back in 2009. I know, that's 11 years ago. Crazy. And yeah, it was never really, I never really intended to make a sequel to it, to be honest. Hello? But the idea really was, I had a testing ground, as I call it, where I would test new things, with level layouts, trying to import art, which didn't go too well. And then over time I realised I had most of a project finished. And yeah, from there I just thought, wow, let's see if I can get this finished in time for the contest, and lo and behold I did. So we're going to play as Sonic alone. I don't like playing as Sonic and Tails, because Tails just annoys me when he's being controlled by the AI. And Tails alone is, well, I prefer Sonic over Tails, so we're just going to go right in. And I'm going to try and show as many secrets as that I can as we go. Just so you're then aware of some more things you might not have known of before. So here we go. So the first thing is there's different, obviously, the palette. Yeah, I'm not the best at palettes. At this point I literally make a joke out of the fact that I oversaturate all the colours and or undersaturate them, either way. But yeah, I tried my best here, and I'm happy with the palette. It could be better, but it's acceptable. The music, obviously, as well, is using the 2-player track. I have no skill with music whatsoever, so I didn't bother trying to import anything. I just thought I'd use whatever was there stock in the game to sort of complement what I was working with. I always quite liked this track, to be fair, and you know, have fond memories of it playing when I was playing 2-player with my brother and my sister growing up. There's a bit of a running joke now that anytime I want to play Sonic 2 2-player that nobody wants to play with me because they won't win. Especially with my brother, he refuses to play, and it's a joke where I go, "Do you want to play Sonic 2 2-player?" And he looks at me and laughs and goes, "No." Just flat no, every time. But yeah, it brings back memories. I did increase the brightness of the sky a bit as well, because I thought it was overly dark for very little reason in the original palette. Not too sure why that was, but you know, probably a stylistic choice. Not one that I agree with myself, but there you go. And I also refrained from putting horrible oranges and other colours for the grass. There's only so much orange you can try and put on the same artwork to make it look like autumn without it looking just wrong. So I chose not to do that. You'll notice the background is also a little bit cut off there on the right side, where it loops. I didn't get around to fixing that. My apologies, but then to be fair, that I had very little desire in doing it. I thought it was a very minor thing, and you know, now that I've pointed it out, you might notice, but you might not have noticed before. And there's me looking absolutely terrible playing the game. Lovely. And again. This area that I'm in right now actually used to be quite a lot different until about 2 weeks before the deadline. I actually changed it quite a bit. Emerald Hill, as you probably noticed, does have a few areas that feel incredibly familiar, and that's because Emerald Hill was one of the last levels I worked on before the contest entry deadline. And as such, I didn't have time to do a full modification that I would have liked to have done with the layout. So there's still a few nods to the original, like for example where I am now, which is obviously going to be a bit delayed for yourselves, but yeah, it definitely, if I had more time to expand on that, I probably would have done, but I just wanted, like I said in the submission text, I was more interested in releasing the project to the public for the contests, and because I had no desire to work on it from that point. Like I said, it was started as a testing ground, and I wanted to just release it to gauge people's opinion on it, really. And yeah, obviously it went quite well because I won a contest trophy, so it's quite nice, you know. I'll talk a bit more in depth about some of the other changes when I actually get past Emerald Hill, because at the moment it's just Emerald Hill Zone. There's nothing spectacular here to talk about. Bosses, I originally didn't plan to at least make some modifications to, but again, my skill level is limited in the coding department, and as such, it made more sense to not try and do things that would probably look a bit odd and out of place compared to the rest of the game with them. I did make some modifications to both Silver Sonic and the Death Egg Robot. You'll probably see them when we get there much later in the game. And again, that was just unfortunate. A Captain Hindsight style apology for the Death Egg Robot crashing on many emulators and hardware in the initial version 1.0 release. Part of that is my fault indeed, trying to do things that I didn't know what I was doing, you know, as you do. And the other part of it was the fact that I forgot to test that last minute change on anything other than Sega Fusion. So yeah, feel free to shout at me for that. I made a last minute change, thought it was acceptable, pushed it into Sega Fusion and to test it. It looked fine, and I thought perfect. And then realised when it was far too late that there was a problem. But I think we've all done mistakes like that before. Learn from it and move on, really. So the palette for this level I actually quite like myself. I didn't make much of a modification. Obviously the metal now has a bit of a rusted look to it, and the background colours have definitely changed. Again, my personal opinion of what makes a good palette is drastically different to most other people. So I really like the new look of this level. But I know a few other people who have played this, played this hack in the contest or, in the last week or so disagree and they don't like it, and that's up to them. So I'm all for, people's personal opinion and then seeing whether we can change that opinion, maybe. So the thing is, actually, is when you start playing a game like Sonic, it's actually a lot more difficult to talk over it than you might realise. I've watched so many streams in the hacking contest week, it looks so easy for the people who are streaming to also talk over the content, which means I can understand why you have other people who are doing some of the talking for you. You also focus purely on playing the game and trying to make the footage look entertaining at least. But then you also have someone else giving some more of a verbal commentary. Doing both at the same time is actually quite mentally demanding, more so than you might realise. I mean, yeah, feel free. I put up a video earlier with the download link of this, of version 1.1. You can download version 1.0 also from the hacking contest site. But again, your mileage of whether you can defeat the final boss will vary depending on what emulator you run it on. If you're running it on an emulator, of course, if you're on hardware, you're not going to be able to complete the game because it will crash on the final boss, which is just unfortunate. But like I said, that's why I released version 1.1, because I felt, even though I originally didn't plan on releasing any bug fix of any kind, when I found out the final boss had a bug that caused the entire game to crash, I couldn't leave it like that. I had to go back and fix it. That was like the end, it's one situation that I hadn't considered. But no, this project won't be worked on after this point. I'm happy with the state that it's in now. And yeah, you can complete it from start to finish. That's the entire point. So yeah, feel free to give it a go if you're interested. I had a lot of fun actually designing the layout for this new chemical plant layout. Chemical plant uses a lot of path swappers, being able to swap from one path to the other, highs and lows in front and behind things, and it did get to a point where the game was lagging very heavily due to the overabundance of path swappers. Luckily, I figured out that springs can also act as a path swapper depending on their subtype, so that cut down on a lot of object usage. It allowed me to keep most of the same layout. But juggling the lag that's caused by a lot of excess objects is something that I've in Sonic 2 at least, it's quite difficult to sort of handle. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, as I worked with before, it's less of a problem because the objects load depending on both X and Y axis, whereas in Sonic 2 they don't. So yeah, that was more a bit of a new situation to have to deal with. So here we are in Aquatic Ruin, everybody's favourite underwater level, said no one ever. Yeah, Aquatic Ruin is actually quite an interesting level to work with. The chunks that are there by default, you know, definitely have their, you know, they're developed mostly for single purpose use, so trying to redesign a layout with them is definitely taxing. I had to do a lot of modification actually to the collision of them to make them even work the ways that I wanted to. And obviously that's not something you probably would even notice while, you know, watching me play or playing yourself, but yeah, a lot of the collision had to be redone on a lot of them just to make them work with each other correctly. Not something I had a problem with doing, but I know some others who have definitely delved into ROM hacking themselves might have a, you know, it's quite an intimidating thing really when you've got an entire set of chunks ready to be used and yet you have to start redrawing collision on them because they don't work the way you want them to. Oh, that was just really unfortunate. And that, I'm surprised I didn't die. I do wonder maybe if I should move those chops back a bit. Again though, I'm not doing that. I'm not going back and making more changes at this point. Yeah, I did have fun making this layout though, to be fair. Like, you know, Aquatic Ruin is quite the interesting water level. It's nowhere near the same blocky, simplistic nature of, say, Labyrinth Zone. It's probably on par with the sort of editability you get from Hydro City Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, to be fair. I mean, that level has much more of a focus on speed, but that doesn't detract from the sort of level of editability you have with it. I've decided to just go back very briefly because there are some other paths that I could have taken and I didn't. For example, up here. The swings actually do have a little interesting mechanic with them. Some people will know it, some people won't. Whereby one of the ones at the start of Act 2 of Aquatic Ruin in the original game, if you stand on it long enough, it just sort of detracts from the pulley, like so. And then it rides on the water surface. It's quite interesting when you see the reaction to people when they first see that and they've been playing the game for so long time. Yeah, they're quite surprised that you can do that. And yeah, well, I've known about it for so long, so to me it's just like, you know, it's one of the small little gimmicks of Aquatic Ruin Zone. Yeah, to be fair, like when it comes to water zones, most people have like this, like, you know, it's the Sonic formula, the way that the games work, doesn't really lend itself to water very well. And obviously the first game, you know, with Labyrinth Zone sort of cemented that it was this very slow, methodical, blocky platformer style gameplay when water's included. And it took them until like Hydro City to learn that you could have some water and be fast. I don't know whether that was intentional or not, but it definitely feels that way. When it comes to some of the later Sonic games as well, though, I don't have anything against water levels at all, as long as it's not, I don't feel like the entire water's under level, you know, the entire level is under the water, because that to me just feels like more daunting than anything, you know, having to constantly wait for air bubbles everywhere. So again, I use this trick here because you know, why not use it? And if you ride this one for long enough, you'll see that it does lead to an extra path with some extra goodies in it. There should be, if I remember correctly. There you go. I mean, I designed the thing, I should know where things are. So we're coming up to the end of Aquatic Ruin Zone. I don't need the checkpoint, I've played this game so many times I could probably defeat this boss in my sleep. Blindfolded is obviously another way of doing so. I joke about that, but I have tried playing Sonic blindfolded before. my mileage varied. Sonic 1 couldn't get past. I could get past Green Hill Zone, but not Act 2. 1, but not Act 2. I could get to Chemical Plant 2, and then I sort of struggled with the falling out to the lower paths in Sonic 2. So Casino Night Zone. There's a reason why I said in the judges' notes that this level was one of the ones I wouldn't have recommended playing in this hack, and the reason why is because as much as I love Casino Night Zone, I don't like editing it. And part of the reason is you have these like large set pieces that the game uses, like, you know, large point boards and the slot machines. They take up a lot of space, a lot of chunks to have to be put together, and a lot of it feels very samey when you try and sort of modify it. As such, I was still editing this one in the last week between the initial deadline and the extended deadline of the contest, just because initial like reaction to it was that it felt too similar to the original layout, and I could understand that because it's one of the ones that I really didn't want to come back to. I'm just going to go over here and grab a 1-up if I can get past the bumpers. Shouldn't be a problem. The large red triangle bumpers use a different object set to the standard objects. You see objects like, for example, the bumpers, badniks, monitors, whereas the red triangle bumpers in Casino use a third object list. It's definitely an interesting concept, because none of the other levels in the game use that different object list. I'm just wondering if you did utilize it for other levels, how you'd even use it, like what would be the benefits to doing that. Oh yes, actually I will mention that. Yeah. So again, keeping with the theme of the general hack, it was a case of I wanted to at least make most, if not all, of the levels have a different palette. The only one that didn't get one by the release was Metropolis, because I couldn't get a colour scheme that worked properly. But yeah, I did change the yellows to grey here. I think it works, but again, it fits in with the joke of my desaturated palettes. So yeah, that's why I kept it. So this little area that I'm currently in can only be accessed by using the elevator to go up and then walking back and taking a second elevator back down. But it is a slot machine you can technically use for the whole 10 minutes of your time. So your reward I feel is justified, and obviously a 1-up when you exit. Coming up to the old tunnel. Didn't really bother changing much of this apart from the slight modifications of the end part. Yeah, Casino Night went through a lot of changes actually in development from the beta version to the final release back in '92. You know, the prototypes show a completely different palette using, you know, neon pink and like a cyan color. The animated tiles are different. And in general, even the background has completely been redrawn, which I thought was quite interesting because they actually redrew the background like a couple of times before they completely redid all the artwork. And I'm still unsure as to why they did, because I don't think there was even a problem really with the artwork as it stood in the beta version. But there you are. They must have felt it was warranted to change it. Also explains why a lot of ROM hacks that decide to change Casino Night do opt for either the beta artwork or even just the beta palette, because it's something different, isn't it? Can't fault them for that. Although I am of the other persuasion when it comes to implementing loads of things from the beta or the prototype versions of games into the final into a ROM hack, just because you can. There's been quite a few projects I've seen where people have implemented, you know, prototype enemies and prototype layouts and prototype decisions that I think will probably change for the better, you know, for the final version of the game, to make things better, to make things smoother, play better, or as a stylistic choice didn't really match what they were going for. But you know, in my opinion, I've always been of the of the opinion that those things were removed for a reason, most likely, not just because they were there before and they were then removed for, without justification. So now we're taking the lower path here of Act 2. Again, like I said earlier, some small parts will feel incredibly familiar. But then that's because I didn't do much of a modification to the layout as much as I would have liked. That's the thing, you'll notice when you develop layouts, you have this tendency to like developing layouts for certain levels, and other levels you sort of try to avoid or get done as quick as possible. With Sonic 3 I had the same thing actually. Mushroom Hill Zone was one of the levels I hated developing level layouts for. It's hard to say why. It really is hard to say why, because there's not much there that couldn't be worked with. But I think part of the problem was you have a lot of focus on these really elaborate loops and running sections, whereas the level gimmicks, some of them really do take away from that. For example, the large pulleys and the plants that sort of attach to Sonic that then stop him from running away. It's quite a interesting level to develop for. I really dislike this boss. Not because it's hard, but it's just boring. Hello! So that's... I can never remember the names for them, because all the bosses have like names in Japanese, but in English it's just like they're just called bosses. It's usually Egg something, like Egg Mobile, Egg Carnival, etc. So on to Hilltop Zone. I opted for a bit of a change in the main colour, so from blue to brown, which I thought worked rather well. The background I tried to make a little bit stormy, but it's hard to do those colours when you're above the clouds. Yeah, my justification is terrible at best, if I'm being honest. But I quite like the brown colour, so I kept it. Hey, see that? Another Rexon bug. He decides to load himself twice again. So Rexon, that purple sea serpent type badnik who likes to live in lava, they are incredibly buggy in the original game, to the point where they like to load themselves multiple times depending on how far away you get from them. Obviously there's also a Rexon crash, whereby you can hit them at a certain way, at a certain angle, a certain time of day where the moon is either half shown or not in the sky, and the game just decides to crash with very little understanding as to how or why. They're also incredibly finicky to place down in the editor. Yeah, they're just annoying in general. So there's a very large shortcut slash secret passageway you can take in this act. If you grab the invincibility that I'm just about to get, and then take the lower path, you can run through the lava and take a new path. It's difficult for a small amount of time, but then you come straight out of the bottom and you skip quite a large section of level. I like putting in passageways like that if I can, but it's not. But sometimes the level sort of layout that you've already started developing doesn't really allow for that. I've also learned that not many people like the idea of being stuck in small loops, as proven with my level layout for Marble Garden 2 in DA Garden Edition. I got a lot of flack for that. So much so that even in the modification for Sonic 3 Air, we had people telling me that I should change it, and Thorn deciding to make it a bit more obvious. Well, yeah, Hilltop and Emerald Hill do use the same art set for the ground. The background obviously is completely different, but the general foreground art is mostly the same. And then Hilltop loads its own like patches, basically additional tiles on top of the Emerald Hill ones. So the trees are then replaced with these trees, the background is replaced with this background. But in general, all the foreground stuff is exactly the same. People have speculated that that's probably like a leftover from when there was time travel in Sonic 2's development, but it's very hard to sort of make that assumption. There's nothing that really lends itself to that other than the fact that they share the same artwork. And then Chemical Plant Zone and Death Egg also share the same artwork, so it's an interesting, you know, observation, but there's nothing really sort of make it concrete, so nice idea though. Oh, come on. So Hilltop is one of the levels that I actually quite like developing for, especially over Emerald Hill, because Hilltop's got a lot of ouch. No, it doesn't have a lot of ouch. It has a lot of level gimmicks that work quite well with the chunks that are in the level to begin with. So you can sort of be a bit creative with them. I'm just constantly failing at this point, aren't I? But you know, the pulley platforms that you just rode on there, you know, obviously the seesaws with the fireball sort of enemies on them that you can't kill, sort of lend themselves to quite a vertical level in some ways, but also a horizontal one in the way that the pulleys move. Hilltop also being one of the few levels that received extra paths put in entirely in the mobile version of the game. I mean, it's nice to see new paths, but the quality of them is questionable. Just going to do the 8 hits on this boss because I'm bored of him. And he's done. So now we're moving on to the next level, Mystic Cave Zone. Before we start, how many people are sick of seeing Hidden Palace Zone at this point, being crammed in, thanks to the mobile versions? I'll put my hand up to that. I chose to circumvent the entire ideology of how music is used and put the 2-player music back in, because why not? Ah, Zeta, no worries, it's fine. You didn't have to be here anyway, I appreciate that you are. So this palette for this level was literally made in about 10 minutes before I decided to make the contest entry final. Because I was trying many different colour schemes and none of them were really working. This one kind of worked. I was just like, you know what, I'm done, that'll do. I wish I could have... I mean, there's nothing wrong with the palette, to be fair, it works, but it's just the fact that it was just a last minute addition really. And obviously, the only other level that didn't get a palette then was Metropolis. Mystic Cave has some really interesting set pieces though to work with. A lot of level specific gimmicks that really wouldn't work in other levels. Yeah, that's true. The thing is with Hidden Palace as well is, if you look at the original layout, it has in the terms of the gimmicks for the level itself, apart from the bridge to make it obviously connect up to chunks, there's not much there in the way of level specific gimmicks. It's actually missing those, and it does sort of prove that the level really was unfinished, but people seem to be under the impression that it wasn't. Just because the artwork's finished and chunks have been completed and even a testing layout, as I would call it, is in place, doesn't mean the level's anywhere close to finished. It's the same as Wood Zone really. There's about 8 chunks where artwork's been imported, that's it. I mean, of all of the cut zones as well, most of them to me do look unfinished for a reason. For example, even Dust Hill Zone that I've seen I say Dust Hill in air quotes of course, but the amount of times I've seen that implemented, and I just look at the block usage and the way that people force the chunks together, and it just looks really bad to me. You know, to me, there's a reason that level was cut. Yeah, that's exactly it. If you're trying to re-implement a level that was cut from the final release of the game, and you're having to create all these extra things just to make it work, then maybe you should question the fact that it really was unfinished at that stage, for good reason as well. I mean, if you think about it another way, say for example the level I'm playing now, Mystic Cave, say if this was cut from the final game, and we found all the level specific objects that were created for it, we found, you know, the chunks, the artwork, the collision, everything, we found everything for it, but just the level was cut. Then you'd question, you go, well hang on a minute, why has the entire level been cut? I mean, you've got all the assets for it ready to go. I mean, yeah, to be fair, I think part of the reason why people have such a nostalgia for Hidden Palace as well is it didn't help that back in the, you know, back when in '92 when they were releasing images in magazines and even in, you know, from Sega themselves, they released images of Hidden Palace Zone, and you say, well, if you're releasing images of this level, surely it's going to be in the final game, and then that doesn't help when you have those memories and, you know, nostalgia as well sort of plays a factor into it of you remembering the zone you never got to play, and you feel like you've waited 20 plus years to play it, and you know, I can understand that you have, like, you build up this hype in your head and you finally get to play it. For me, that didn't really happen though. The only notion I had that Hidden Palace Zone might even be a thing was one, a mention in a magazine I remember reading as a kid, but then I thought they were referring to Sonic 3, not Sonic 2. And the other was the fact that track 10 was even in the final game. I used to play it, and I used to think it was like for something that would happen after the credits, after you had Supersonic and you'd beaten the game. So the amount of times I beat the game with all the emeralds of Supersonic, and the track never played for anything, and I thought maybe it was with Tails, maybe it was Sonic and Tails, maybe I had to do it at a certain time, and I would give myself all these extra little, you know, stipulations as to how to get this track to play, and it never did. Again, you know, it was used in the final for Hidden Palace Zone, but as to what it was its intended purpose was for, we still have no idea. So back on the subject of what I'm playing, obviously, not to detract from the conversation, of course. This is Oil Ocean Zone. This level is one of the first that I developed a level layout for as part of my original testing ground ROM. And yeah, I had a lot of fun making the layout for this. Many memories of just sitting there in my lunch breaks from work, developing for this. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it. The palette is, wow, as you can tell, obviously a lot more blue. The main focus really that I decided to change was the background to make it look a bit more like a morning or an evening sunset, which doesn't really work too well with the sun, I've noticed, but nonetheless it's you know, it works well enough. It's not exactly questionable. But Oil Ocean Zone has a lot of gimmicks for the level to make it like its own thing, and you know, I thoroughly enjoyed sort of taking advantage of what was available to, you know, to make new layouts for this level. Yes, I did. Yes, I'm using the two-player track again. Well, I say two-player, but this was used in the beta version. And unpopular opinion here, but I do think this track fits this level. I think there's a reason why it was originally developed for this level. And that's not to take away from the final Oil Ocean Zone track, of course, but it's, you know, I still think this track fits this level. Some people say, oh yeah, well it doesn't have like the same tone as the final track, and that's true, it doesn't. To me it just feels like, you know, an industrial sort of boardwalk sort of style track, which is, you know, and I feel it fits the level quite well. The final zone does feel more like a desert level to me, with this sort of motifs that are scattered around it. You know, and sort of adapting that to Oil Ocean isn't as far-fetched as they thought, which is probably why they did it. Oh yeah, Yeah, don't get me started on the encore mode palette for this level. Oh, I hate it. I really do. It's so uninspired is probably the best word to describe it. Then, to be fair, like my choice of music, if I had the opportunity to replace like most of the entire game, would be a lot different to, you know, other people's. You know, and obviously we have our own opinions. They're obviously going to differ. So I'm always in the mindset that, you know, you can have your opinion to yourself. That's fine, but it's when you start pushing that opinion onto other people that then you should probably start to question whether or not it's an opinion or whether you think it's fact. Got off a side rant again as I do. I'm supposed to be showing off little secrets everywhere and I keep forgetting to show them. My apologies for that. Yes, that's true actually, yeah. Yeah, the final palette has that sort of feeling of the heat of the like a desert or like a, you know, an oil being in the desert isn't exactly far fetched, is it? So it does work in that regard. The final track does sort of fit the level, and I've never said it doesn't. I just feel like this track also works for the level, more so than the layout of the prototype, where there was more of a focus on the small wrecking balls. This boss isn't, well, it's a lot of waiting around. I always felt with this boss. Same here, obviously. Oh, they made a right mess of this in the first version of the of Mania with this boss, where the if you didn't have a fire shield, yeah, you pretty much struggled with it. The difficulty was insane. I'm glad they sort of fixed it a bit. So we're already up to Metropolis Zone. Didn't take very long. Metropolis, as I've said before, is the only zone in this hack that doesn't have a palette change. Not that that detracts, of course, from the level, but Metropolis is an incredibly interesting level to develop layouts for, I can tell you that right now. The huge amount of gimmicks that are available for this level, it really is incredible. The only thing that I had to worry about is lag, again, very similar to Chemical Plant, and it's just mostly Chemical Plant in this level really. The main issues is this level has objects that are like multi-objects in one, so obviously like, you know, the rotating wheels, yeah, the cogs, they are multi-separate objects, and so they use a lot of objects, and when you load a lot of them on the same vertical strip, things start to lag quite heavily. There's still some of that in this final layout, but I had to rework quite a few sections multiple times in order to try and reduce it as much as I could. And when you play as Sonic and Tails together, you will experience it, and there's not much I can really do apart from apologise. Well, yeah, another part of the problem is as well is my level layouts tend to, you know, accommodate multiple paths, and because of the way Sonic 2 loads objects, which is to say doesn't consider the fact that they might be very far apart vertically, but it still loads them all in vertical strips. So sometimes you will just suffer from really heavy lag in certain areas where you look and you go, there's nothing here, why is it lagging? And in Sonic 1 and 2 it's because on another path somewhere there's probably a load of objects you can't see. So yeah, I did cut down Metropolis to 2 acts, and part of the reason was, one, yes, it's too long with 3 acts in my opinion, I agree with you, and the other one as well is I had another plan to make Metropolis Act 3 its own zone, which was in progress. I did release the source code as well when I released the ROM hack. That's on the Sonic Retro and SRG forums. I'm not going to say what that is, but you're more than welcome to have a look in there and see what I was trying to do. The title card still is going to say Metropolis, but it doesn't say Act, and it did again start to become something before I canned it. Same as Wing Fortress. Oh, the timing on this is so annoying. So we can do it. Hello, Noah. Yeah. Again, I'm trying to take some of the paths that may not have been as much taken as some of the others, just to show a little bit of the other parts of the layout you might not have seen. Kinda. I mean, the idea was for it to have its own artwork, its own palette, its own thing, but still use Metropolis's gimmicks. So sort of in that vein, but yeah, it started but never got anywhere close to being finished before I just scrapped it. Yeah, the lag around here is quite something. I have also had to fix an issue with one of the lava pools down there between version 1.0 and 1.1. I hadn't noticed it, but I put an invisible object in the wrong place, and yes, I can't remember who, but somebody spotted it. I kind of felt the lag just a bit there as I was walking down that slope. Just a little bit. I'll give over. Ah, Metropolis 2. And here we are in Defect Zone. One of the levels actually has custom artwork by myself. It's really not as impressive as I would have liked, but I managed to get something here that was different. The artwork is for the ground is actually from Metropolis. The rest of it is all just drawn by me. This should not crash now. It doesn't. Good. I mean, you can probably imagine how annoying it is when you release a hack and you think the entire thing works, just for people to literally play 40 to 60 minutes to get to the final boss like I have done, for the game to then just crash on them. And I feel so bad that happened for people. But I really didn't know it was going to be a problem until like 3 weeks after I'd given the final build across to the hacking contest site. So there we go. And there we go. That's Sonic 2 Return to Westside Island. If I could remember the zone ID for, what do you call it, Wing Fortress Zone, I'd be able to show you what that was supposed to be as well, because that's still in the ROM. You can still sort of play that, but I locked it out of the level select. But if I could remember the zone ID for it, I'd be able to put a you know, a par code in and show you it. Might have to have a look at that in a second. It's funny that I've seen these credits. Yeah, if you can just get the zone ID from Wing Fortress, I will then be able to show you after the credits are finished. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's funny, I've had to defend this hack a few times in the last week as well. Because you always get people who don't fully understand how raw band hacking works, and they've just turned around and gone, all you've changed is a few colours on the level, and all you've changed a few bits of the levels, and the rest of it's the same. And I'm just there going, no. If only you understood how much work I had to put in. I mean, that's not like just, you know, I'm not saying anything other than the fact that I wish they'd understand a bit better, but obviously it's a subject they probably only see once a year with the hacking contest, so to them it's, you know, it can't be that difficult, right? You know, I totally understand that. Also, to give you everybody an update as well, I am working on another project at this point, only one. It's been in development for quite some time. Quite a while ago I did do some live streams and be working on it, but since then it's definitely changed in many ways to a point where I want to try and keep that sort of quiet, so that's what I'm going to do. And there's been some changes in areas that you might not expect, so yeah, what I'm going to do is keep that one close to my heart for a while, and what we'll do is in the future I will definitely be releasing that, but it's for now it's just staying quiet. Okay, we'll try 6 then and see what happens, if it is. Yeah, the project is based on Sonic 1, but it's not just another hack very similar to Westside Island. It's a lot different to some of my other projects. Again, though, it's been in development for quite some time. Development recently has slowed down due to the hacking contest and me releasing this, but you know, I'm going to try and pick up development of it again quite a lot, you know, in the near future. So let's try ID 6 as Zeta No says, and we'll see if that does the job. Okay. So let's have a look. I think the code is... Let's try that. Yes, no, it's that. Ah, here we go. So yeah, Wing Fortress Zone. So this was supposed to be finally me bringing back my untitled Sonic 2 hack, which I showed a very long time ago, unreleased from 2009. One of the videos that's decided to also give me 50,000 views on YouTube over the years, which is just ridiculous. Most of this is me trying to recreate it and also testing things out, but yeah, it got halfway there, but it was just sort of a combination of a lack of motivation to continue it, and also I had like very little desire to keep on working on Wing Fortress, because I've worked on Wing Fortress so many times, and the amount of times at this level that I worked on has had to be scrapped and restarted. And again, it got to the point where I just couldn't be bothered to finish it. I was just like, no. As you'll see, stuff like objects are floating because I haven't finalised anything. I did get this conveyor belt working properly, which was nice, because the original one doesn't work properly. I had to redraw it slightly. I was more tying with the idea of, you know, removing a lot of the existing artwork. You can't actually progress from this point, which is annoying, but if you give me just a second I will be able to do so, because I've got methods of doing that. It's not a problem. Let me just put this in. Oh yes, the cheat codes as well have been changed, but they're very easy to remember. I could tell you them, but you know, you could probably find them yourself as well. So we should. Okay. So once you debug to go back to where I was. Obviously the small area where I couldn't progress because Sonic can't jump as high as I'd like. Okay. So yeah, again, I mostly recreated the background, so same as it did in the Untitled Sonic 2 project. Then I started working on the layout backwards from the boss back. And then again, Blacker Motivation sort of killed it. So I always liked this mini boss. I would have liked it more if it actually had sound effects. I know that the Sonic 2 Anniversary Edition in the hacking contest does have sound effects for this, which is really cool in my opinion. It's a small thing, but it definitely needs them. And obviously the mobile port added sound effects to it too. Also, there's some really nice unused behaviour for this boss, whereby the laser destroys the platforms. Again, that was unused though. Would have been cool. And that's pretty much it. Let's just turn the code off, otherwise it will then. And then to Death Egg Zone, the original. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, thank you very much for everybody for attending the stream. I do appreciate it. Yeah, and that's pretty much Sonic 2 Return to Westside Island. That's, you know, the project from start to finish. I'm not going to do, you know, getting the emeralds because I haven't changed them. I haven't changed anything to do with the special stages or anything. I really couldn't be bothered. It's not an area that really interests me, to be honest. Not me anyway. But you know, there's other projects that sort of focus on that sort of area. But yeah, so this has been it, and you know, I've learned quite a lot from this project, to be fair. Like, you know, obviously winning a trophy at the contest, that sort of, you know, confirms that what I'm doing is right, and people are sort of, you know, happy with that, and you know, it means that I want to do more of it, give you guys more, you know, classic layouts that you enjoy playing. Wow, by the looks of things, anyway. So yeah, so I'm gonna be off now. Thanks for joining, and I hope to try and do some more streams soon in the future, hopefully, if things go well. So yeah. Okay, so bye for now, guys.